Hare Krishna. So we'll get started with maybe some kirtan. The mic sounds like it's a little too loud, no? It's echoing a bit. You can maybe turn it down just a little bit.
So the mic goes slow, okay?
Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tera Vanachari Jamuna Tera Vanachari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana 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 Jamuna vanachari Yamuna tira vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Madan Mohan, Radhe. Jayo Radha Madan Mohan, Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Radhe. Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha, Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha, Lakshmi Nrsimha, Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai, Shri Shri Gauritai ki jai, Shri Lakshmi Shingadev ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Manandi. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone to the second day of the seminar. Welcome to all of those who are here and all those who are online as well. Today's session is shorter than the sessions yesterday, but it's basically we have only one agenda item today, which is to answer whatever questions you might have about the material we covered last time, and as well as things that we didn't cover which you would like to hear more about. But before we do that, let me just start off by reviewing a little bit of the different things we talked about. The seminar yesterday, as you know, had three major parts to it. One was talking about the home environment, making that conducive to Krishna conscious education. The second was in terms of the actual curriculum, particularly as based on Prabhupada's books. And the third section was about extracurricular activities and social life. Now, in the first part, we talked about two major things. One was removing all those things in the house that work against our creation of a Krishna-conscious environment at home. And that included things like television and internet and video games and so on. As well as food that's not cooked in a Vaishnav environment. And then we also talked about positive things that we can do to help make our children devotionally oriented. And that included things like morning program, regular performance of japa, strictly eating of Krishna prasad, and deity worship as an important component of children's education. Then in the second part, we discussed the various components, the important components of education, especially in the early years, and those were the 5 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, rote, and raga. And particularly how these 5 provide the tools that you need to go on and study any other subject that the child would like to when they grow older. In terms of reading and writing, or the language arts, we talked about how nice it is to learn that through Srila Prabhupada's books, particularly through Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam contains the greatest of spiritual knowledge. It's the Amala Purana, the purest scripture, the highest pramana also, the greatest source of knowledge. Alongside that, it's also written in stories, so it becomes very naturally attractive to kids. And alongside that, Prabhupada's Srimad Bhagavatam gives us an education in language arts, especially in English, that is at the MA PhD level. And so children can very easily pick up both spiritually good character and strong principles, and materially speaking, they can excel at their academic education by learning their vocabulary and comprehension and reading and writing through Srimad Bhagavatam. And particularly the method we emphasized was the tutorial method, where everything is based on discussion that's driven not just by the parents but also by the children as well. And then we talked about some of the other subjects that are also important, like music and memorization of verses and Sanskrit and mathematics. And moving on at that point then to the social life of children, which becomes also very important in a homeschool environment, and how to fulfill that for kids. We talked about how the temple becomes an excellent resource for this kind of thing, as well as homeschooling cooperatives, where different homeschoolers get together regularly for activities together. We also discussed the role of discipline and how a combination of both firmness as well as a lot of encouragement is the method that Prabhupada encouraged or asked us to use for the discipline of children, as well as games that they play and what kind of Krishna conscious games are nice, vacations, holidays, and many other topics like that. So that's a broad overview. At the very beginning of the seminar, we also discussed some general principles of what the values of education are for devotees, of how raising our children as Krishna conscious kids is actually the greatest responsibility that we have as parents. And to fulfill that responsibility is actually the perfection of education. So our terms for measuring what constitutes proper education are quite a bit different than the other measurements for educational success that people may have out there in the world. And this is why we suggested that homeschooling may be a very powerful alternative to public education, because it provides a method to fulfill both the academic side of things, which children need as they grow up and move into the world, but also it provides us a way to give them a gurukula education, where the parent becomes the guru and the home becomes the kula. And in this way follow Prabhupada's many, many instructions for the raising of children. Of course, he wanted children to go to Gurukul, but considering the fact that Gurukuls are so few and far between in ISKCON, and even large communities don't have access to Gurukuls, many times that's not an option for us. And so then this can be a very viable Krishna conscious alternative. So that's a basic summary, just to refresh your mind about all the various things we covered. And after each section, we ask for questions related to that section. But at this point now, we'll open it up more generally to see if you have questions about any one of these areas, then we can go in depth. Obviously, in a short seminar, we can't go into everything as depth. So this is your opportunity to help us figure out where we want to need to elaborate more or discuss more. Bring your own realizations to the table as well. So we'll start with the question in the back there. Prabhuji has.
Haribol Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I was going through the slides, and I think there's one slide which you didn't talk about, and possible pitfalls of homeschooling and how to overcome them.
Yes.
I think, can you talk more about that? Because
yes,
they were all positives.
Yes.
But what will, there is positive, but what will go negative?
Yes.
We should, so if
right.
you can talk. Thank you.
Okay, so... huh? Yeah. ठीक है. So the possible pitfalls of homeschooling and how to overcome them. I guess the main point to remember here is that this is a homeschooling seminar, so that's why we describe the possible pitfalls of homeschooling. But these pitfalls, as you'll see very soon when we talk about them, are basically found in parents of children who are doing any kind of educational system. If they're going to school, or if they're at home, or they're going to Gurukul. These are basically pitfalls of parents in general.
So these are some of the pitfalls that we gathered, while we were doing seminars everywhere, and we watched and observed some of the things that may actually happen if we are not careful. And also during seminars, talking to parents whose children are going to school, who have similar pitfalls, and also observing those. The first one, like it says, is when parents become very, very ambitious, to have their children excel and be better than the others, than the other children. Like if they are in a very competitive mood, where they have, different. They want the children to go really fast in their academic career, or they just want them to have straight A's, with no room for anything less than that, and showing that disappointment to the children when they do any less than that. So that obviously has a very bad impact on the child, because Prabhupada said that competition is, serious, heavy competition is not good for children. He did not recommend that at all. He said children should be just, playing and having fun. They're children. And they should not have to go through the competition that most adults have to face when they grow up and go into the material world. In fact, during one time, Prabhupada was really upset when there was some, in the Gurukula, they were doing some, competition among children based on a TV game show. And it was called the Krishna Bowl game, which was fashioned after a TV game show. And he was really upset because in that game, the children were, judged according to their recollection of facts from Krishna book. And he was really upset. He says, why are you wasting time? Why are you making the children go through? Why don't you just make the program simple? Just teach them English and Sanskrit, and let them have fun. So he was really upset. So some competition obviously is good for them because we need to, push them to, to do better, but according to their capacity, not beyond their capacity. And what's also really bad is when parents criticize their own children in front of other children and put them down. That, see, this boy is doing better than you. And that, naturally ruins their self-confidence, and their self-esteem. So that's also really bad. So we see this happening, sometimes we see that happening. And also, especially in India, when you see that a lot, where parents get really ambitious because of the social climate, the educational system over there, which encourages so much competition, at an early age. I was in Chandigarh and other places, we did seminars there, and parents were telling us this, how bad it was in terms of where, in order to get, there's so much competition to get to the top jobs, and due to that, and there's too many children, so the number of children selected is very few, and due to that, parents are encouraging the children starting 6th grade to start preparing for these competitive exams, with the result that by the time the child gets to be 20 years old, he's been so stressed out because that's all he's done. He's gone to school, gone for tutoring after that, and and pressure, no playing, nothing. And children like that, they completely, by the time, even if they get into IIT and things like that, they are so disillusioned with life. So, and my younger son was with me at that time, and he was invited to speak at one of those programs, in the Delhi temple, the base, for the base programs where young people collect and the devotees go and give some classes. Like that, my son was invited, and after the class, one boy came to him, young man. He actually came and he said, "Can I talk to you alone?" And he started crying. He said, "You really saved my life. I was going to commit suicide." He was just so frustrated with life, See, and this is the top IIT, And and my younger son Gopal was saying how he went to Oxford, and he said how even in Oxford, in these Western top universities, you see people after they get there, they feel so they still feel frustrated and disillusioned because that's not what happiness is about. They've been and they don't know the purpose of life, and so higher education and all these things doesn't bring any satisfaction to a person. What brings satisfaction is Krishna consciousness, and when people lack that, that goal and purpose of life, they actually become very, very unhappy. And Prabhupada writes in one place how, he said, even in India, which is a land of spiritual culture, little children, they're not allowed to read Bhagavad Gita or any scripture. And because of and so we see our youth being so unhappy and so disillusioned is because we don't encourage that as parents. So he was talking about how bad this is, the situation, and he says these young people, when they do all kinds of wrong things, then we start crying. What happened? So this is what overambitiousness is that at the cost of realizing what is doing to our children, we just push. And the fact of the matter is that if we see that a system is like that and is not working in a way where it helps our children to grow in a normal, responsible way as children, then we have to, as parents, we have a duty to do something about it. In other words, as parents, we have a duty to give our children a happy childhood and not push them or push them in also in environments where we expect them to be something different. Like we expect the children to go to school, but then not, be like others, but to be, like devotees. In other words, there's always a conflict in their minds, I'm a devotee, but I can be a devotee there, but I'm a devotee at home. This kind of conflict is always in their minds, how come I can't go to parties like my other friends? How come I can't watch a movie? How come I can't watch television? All my friends are doing it. So this kind of pressure on them is very hard at that age. So we have to give them so that's why we have to be, as devotees, we have to think, what we can do, in what way can we help them to not be so much under pressure, so much under pressure. And especially the pressure of trying to achieve should be avoided at all costs. There was one boy, they were telling me in Chandigarh, who started preparing for IIT since he was in 5th grade or something, and then in the end he lost it. He didn't come. He was 2,000 number down. And he was so disappointed, so disappointed. I mean, he's planning for this for 10 years, and he still failed. So we, as devotees, we realize that everything is not on achievement, how much we can study. We also understand the hand of Krishna, in this. And so we can take a more balanced approach to life. Okay, we want our children to become this, but okay, it's up to Krishna. We do some, effort in this regard, but it's up to Krishna. It shouldn't be at the cost of children's spiritual life, their chanting and their participation in university, in the temple. Of course, we have to balance everything. They also have to be good students and study, but we should be very careful about that. And the second one is enviousness and imitation of others. My child has to be just like them. So that's also a lot of, when we want our children to excel because somebody else's child is also doing well. And we had an example of this in Boise where these parents were feeling like that. And they did that to the child, where the constant reminder to him that he's not as good as this other child, just messed him up psychologically, where he could never be good enough, so that's...
The thing about homeschooling is that if we have this type of push mentality for studies, then homeschooling can provide an excellent opportunity for parents to push their children, right? So this is why we specifically mention this, because if we think of homeschooling as, put my child in a room with a stack of books and close the door and I'll see you 8 hours later and make sure you get this done and this done, then it's not homeschooling. I mean, that's just torture for a child. In fact, in our homeschooling experience, the last thing I remember is sitting in a room with a stack of books and studying. Means when I think back to the homeschooling experience, what I think of are school programs, book distribution, Sunday feasts, festivals, preaching opportunities, interfaith events. Those are all the things that come to mind every time I think back about those years, that excitement of that time. And of course the studies were there. In terms of the studies, what I remember is studying Bhagavatam and getting into such interesting discussions and stories and being excited about finishing another chapter and so on. But the rigmarole of, get your work done, get your studies done and so on, I'm sure it was there because clearly we did it and my mother must remember that. But from a student's perspective, that wasn't our major experience. And that's what we have to see in terms of homeschooling and avoiding this pitfall, that homeschooling is not just one way for the parents to even more express their overambitiousness of I push the child every morning and every evening when he goes to school. Now I'll have the chance to push him all day also. And that's not nice. That's not good. It's not good for the child. It's not good for the parents. So the point is that Krishna conscious homeschooling is it's a holistic process. We cannot just take one part of it and say, I'm just going to do the academics part and everything else, they can Bhagavatam and preaching activities and so on, we'll leave. I'm not interested. The other serious devotees can do it. I'll just do the academics. That's not Krishna conscious homeschooling. It's something else, right? So that's one of the important things to remember in homeschooling. Is to make it a vibrant and balanced experience. And we say this especially when our audiences are from Indian background, because as Indians we have this tendency anyway. Western families often are more balanced in this regard, but we're naturally very successful. We have been, and we want that success to go to our kids, but we just have to be careful to be balanced about it. The only other thing that we have to be careful about, specifically in regard to homeschooling, is if there are serious problems at home in terms of family relationships, things that really make the home environment problematic, then the parents need to sort that out to some degree before inviting the child to be in that environment continuously. And that doesn't refer to the average, usual problems that happen between husband and wife or among family members or in-laws or things like that. The day-to-day stuff is not a problem. In other words, when the children grow up, then it's not that they need to get some kind of a fairy tale picture perfect environment. That's not what the material world is, and there's no reason to try to create that false impression for our kids. So they understand, okay, there are times when mother and father get really stressed out. There are times when, my mother shouts at me and she doesn't mean to do so, and whatever it is. And they understand these things. But if the problems are super severe, then yes, it's something that we need to sort out before we attempt homeschooling. And then the other thing is that it should not, any form of education should not, if our children are excelling, should not become a cause for arrogance, either in the parents or in the children, or a sense of superiority, that I'm so much better than everyone else, that my children are too good to associate with any other kids because we follow pure Krishna conscious lifestyle and we're not eating karmi bread at home and we're not watching TV, and these kids are, so they're all not very nice. And that type of attitude, then what happens is if the parents have that kind of attitude, then the children develop the same attitude as well. They see that, they pick up on it, and then they also then grow up cultivating that kind of arrogance. If we raise our children to be perfect but proud, then we failed, right? Then we failed. Better we're a little imperfect but have some humility there. Because the fact is we'll never be perfect. Perfection is something that's only reserved for Krishna. And so the thing is with children is that we set very clear standards and we explain to them what is our standard. See, our standard, Prabhupada asked us that we do like this. So therefore, we're practicing Krishna consciousness like this. But they are also devotees, and everyone is trying to serve Krishna to the best of their ability. So we have to be friends with them, we have to respect them, we have to love them. Sometimes members of the family may also not up to be that standard, but they are your parents, they're your grandparents, or your uncles, or your aunts. So we have to be nice to them and understand that everyone is devotees. They are your superiors, so you should give them respect. In other words, we should not be afraid that children sometimes don't get the consistent message from everywhere. From the parents, they should get a consistent message. Then they don't get confused. But if they get other messages from other places, that's okay. It means life is all about learning to negotiate differences, right? Negotiate boundaries. Sometimes throughout their life, they will encounter people who are very nice people, but they're weak in some way, materially speaking or spiritually speaking. They're not up to the standard. But they can learn, okay, that's okay. This whole world is different people who are all trying to serve Krishna in different ways. And I know that I have to serve Krishna like this because my spiritual master, my parents, Srila Prabhupada has asked me to serve Krishna like this. But I'm not going to be judgmental of others, holier than thou, that I'm so much better. So that's a very fine line to walk, and it's an important balance that we have to strive for, is maintaining strong standards at home and yet not allowing those standards to be demeaning of others we have to realize everyone is in a unique circumstance. So we cannot judge their circumstance, but we can judge the standard, because that Prabhupada has given us, right? We understand what our standard is, and we have to be very strict about that. Very strict with ourselves and very compassionate towards others. This is the trademark of a Vaishnava, right? Very, very strict to ourselves and very compassionate towards others. So these are some of the important points to remember in possible pitfalls of homeschooling or any kind of educational system.
Thank you, Prabhu. I have a testimonial to share and 2 questions. So I'll start with the testimonial. So today morning, my son asked me that, so what did you learn yesterday? Because that's what I asked him, when I pick him from school, what did you learn at school? So he asked me, what did you learn? I said that, I learned how to, because we are thinking about homeschooling and all that. So I was telling him, and then he asked me, because the next question I usually ask him is, do you have your homework? Like that. So he asked me, do you have a homework? And then I thought, yeah, I do, And then we tried to do that at home today, where we tried to have a morning program and we sang kirtans together. We did some role plays and all that. And all of us together, it's not just him, but all of us felt so nice doing it. And my husband was telling me that after a long time, I feel that we have been together as a family today. So with that inspiration, we would like to, carry that forward and try to do it every day.
This is a nice point, because I do remember when they stopped school. They went to school for 2 years before I realized I could do this. We also felt that impact, that change, because suddenly we were all together for the morning program. And luckily my husband never had to go to work till 9:30. So we had a long morning together. And it just changed the whole thing. The whole stress was gone. Suddenly, from just the stress was gone, and we felt closer as a family. Similar experience.
So the questions part. The first question I have is: so what is the schedule for breakup schedule for a typical homeschooling day?
Like I said yesterday, when children get up in the morning. Now, Prabhupada naturally recommended Mangal Arati for all the children, which is like 4:30, because this is the only austerity he asked the children. But for most householders, even seminars, and for myself also, I realized that it was very difficult to meet that time, because of the fact that my husband went to work, and by the time he came home, he wanted to play with the children and find out what they had done and do things with them. So it always became a late night, and 4:30 was always too early for us. So we would try to target like about 6 o'clock. Or 6:30, more like 6:30, yes. And then we would start our morning program, okay. So we had a temple, so we were, I had morning seva, so I would get up in the morning, but for the children it was earlier, but for the children it started at 6:30, we'd do a full morning program. And because they were a little bit older at that time, 6 and 8, they can stay through a bigger one, a nicer full morning program, which we did. Of course, the arti was not like 20 minutes, more like 10 minutes. And then we'd do Nishinga prayers, Tulsi Puja. And then if they got hungry, a little breakfast after that. And then we would sit and read Srimad Bhagavatam. And that would be very flexible. It could be as little as 1 hour, or it could be as much as 3 hours, depending on what we are talking about, discussion, and the eagerness to read more and discuss more, like that. and then I knew that at least I knew language, and then I would give them a little bit of writing work, like spellings and questions, comprehension questions. When that was done, I knew, okay, a big chunk of my homeschooling curriculum was done. So I was really like, okay, I was satisfied. And then, of course, there would be lunch, and then, after lunch, the body gets a little bit lazy and slow, right? So I would put in subjects like music right after lunch, where they could practice music or memorization, like that. And then they do a bit of maths, like that. And running a preaching center also at the same time always meant that we had something or the other going on outside. Like I said, the school program. If it's not that, then we'd go. We had a university 5 minutes away, walking distance. We'd go on book distribution. Both of us, all three of us, would go and distribute books, and they would enjoy that so much. Like Gopal would be in the stroller, Radhika would hold my hand, and we'd walk, and we'd have a book bag, and Gopal would hand out the card because he was too little, and Radhika would hand out the book. So it was so much fun. And every time we gave out a book and came back, and they'd tell their father. So it was, something that they really look forward to, and it kind of helped them to mix with other people, see other people, talk to them, like that. So, and there were so many, we would participate in in so many city events. Like there's always something going on. There's a city fair, or Earth Day, or this day or that day. How in America you have so many things, even indoor events where we could have a table or distribute some food or cookies. I would take advantage of everything, and my husband was so supportive. Like he really, my husband's life was the temple. Like everything centered around the temple for him. So anything he would encourage me to go and participate, because he would be at work, mostly. So that took most of our time, So like I was saying, how the Krishna conscious lifestyle for us was, doing the theory part, reading, and then actually putting it into practice, which took the rest of the day practically. So by the time, and of course we would have I would start cooking the evening dinner. They would, help me with that. So in other words, whatever I did, they were always there with me. And if they had to do something, we didn't have a specific place for homeschooling. So sometimes they would be working on the kitchen table. Sometimes wherever I would go around the house, they would be there. And then by evening, we were all ready to settle down, and so that by the time, and that would be like a big encouragement for them to get things ready before Papa came home. So we'd quickly clean up the house, get everything ready, and so that when he came, everything would be, nice. And that's pretty much, and when festivals came for a week, we would be so engrossed in making the festival a success. But to me, it was so much learning that was going on. Even when we had to make props, they got all their art lessons through props. Making a bow and arrow, or a hill, Govardhan Hill or something, just involves so much artwork. So instead of having art classes and all, I would, let them do art this way. So I did not join too many classes, outside, because, I never had the time, except for piano class that they did for 2 years. I can't remember anything really. And they did swimming classes in summer. We were always so busy, just involved in temple things, and that's where they learned everything, like how to organize, how to manage. Like we had a newsletter that we were having for quite some time, temple newsletter. Gopal was involved in that, taking the newsletter out, and you can imagine so many hands-on experience to take out a temple newsletter, writing, and getting articles in, and children's section, and then on top of that, mailing it, and meeting deadlines. So it was all hands-on experience. Whatever they experienced was just hands-on. And then talking to guests, such an important part where they could actually meet other people. And kirtan, having to play kirtan in the temple, and classes. Many times we would start helping them, encourage them to give classes also, So like this, I mean, I'm just trying to give you an idea how we would spend our day. It was so much centered on the temple and whatever Prabhupada gave us. And like that's what I was saying yesterday, that Prabhupada gave us everything. Within Krishna consciousness, there's everything. And if we just simply take advantage of that, we can give our children the best training with anything, nothing lacking.
Thank you, Mataji. My next question is, did you set any like yearly goals for them? Like this year I would, teach this, cover this part of, Krishna consciousness or this book. Did you set any yearly goals? How did you? Because now 1 year when they get older, they would be ready for, to learn something new or higher, advanced learning. So did you set such goals to measure or to make sure that, they are learning, continuously learning?
Well, as a team, my husband and myself, he provided, I gave them all this practical things, and he was like my check and balance type thing, where he would make sure that they academically they were up to the mark, and which was very good for me because I had that tendency to just keep on doing all these spiritual things and not worry about the academics, and he actually helped me to stay focused on that also. So we kind of provided we were complementing each other quite nicely. And so we made sure through these exams, annual exams that we have for homeschoolers now everywhere, even in California, we made sure that they were doing the right things, even though we were doing it all through Prabhupada's books and all those things. So that would be my measure of success. And every time they gave that exam, and I knew, okay, the paper would say, okay, they are 2 grades higher than where they should be. So I knew, okay, I'm doing okay, because they were tested. So basically, other than that, I just kept up my program. And besides Srimad Bhagavatam, we also did other books, spiritual books, like just books by devotees and sannyasis, on their reading time, like I remember reading the book Hare Krishna Explosion by Hayagriva. It's really a fun book about the early days with Gopal, and we read the book together. Then they did the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan by Satyaraj Das, like this. So so they felt like, just like every child wants to have, this whole stack of novels to read and things like that, fun books. We had our own stack, and just about every book that a senior devotee has written or a sannyasi had written, we went through it. And at night, during their bedtime, when they were in bed, I would read them the Prabhupada Lilamrit. We finished the entire Lilamrit like that, and they would be just loved it, and they wouldn't want to read more and more and not go to bed. I mean, they would hear while I read. So so many. I really didn't have any program but I knew that they had to be up to the mark, like whatever it was. They should finish this grade this year. So basically, I knew what was going on, So, but within that, I was very flexible. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mataji.
Actually, my question to Prabhuji, as a child, I loved to go to school because staying in home is so monotonous. So I felt like when homeschooling is there, did you feel like it is monotonous every day not to go school? And I loved school, I loved college, so how did you feel?
Yeah, for us, school was very monotonous, very boring. You'd go in the morning, and then every day you'll get the same lessons, and the lessons would be so slow, and then you go out and play with the kids, and the kids would get into the same fights every day and the same issues, and at home it was so much excitement all the time. And this is why it's important that we make homeschooling part of a Krishna conscious lifestyle. Krishna consciousness is not one subject in your homeschooling. That's the important thing to remember. If you make it, okay, now let's do the spiritual subject, and then you'll do the other subjects, then it's no good. Then school is better. But when homeschooling becomes part of a Krishna conscious lifestyle, and a Krishna conscious lifestyle, like my mother has been just describing, is so vibrant and full of activity and variety and different things, then it becomes something that's, very, you look forward to a lot. It's so exciting, in terms of everything. Every day there's something to look forward to, some new challenge to go to, some kind of public activity is there, the temple activities are there. So that's a very full lifestyle. As devotees, we have very full lifestyles. Means growing up in a secular or non-devotee environment, sort of the usual environment, is a very different experience than growing up in a devotee household. And if we do what Prabhupada has given us, then that experience is very exciting for children. Also the environment of schools has also changed a lot. Every passing generation, the environment changes. So a lot of the fun that was there in the school is now replaced by a lot of pressure, peer pressure, and bullying, and very heavy things. I mean, this was about 10 years ago. Mother Urmila Mataji wrote an article in BTG in which she listed the top 10 problems in schools in the 1980s. And it was chewing gum, it was screaming, running in the hallways, talking back to the teacher, not listening properly, like that. And then the top 10 problems she wrote for the 90s, which was the current time when she was writing this, it was teen pregnancy, guns in school, violence towards the teacher or fellow students, bullying, depression, things like that. And these days, then it becomes, the list is yet different. Many of those same problems are there, plus you've got a whole host of other kinds of internet-driven problems like Facebook bullying and social embarrassments that children face, and jealousy in terms of. So there's a whole sort of development in the school environment.
I agree, because when we were going to school, the time was different, and I loved our teachers. We had central school syllabus, so I mean, competition was there, but it was healthy competition. I know maybe here schools may be different.
And you can get better schools. It's not that every school is horrible. You can get better schools, but the point is that Krishna consciousness offers all of that plus more. You see, all the excitement you might get, we get plus more excitement that's born of the vivaciousness that comes from being a devotee. And that's what allows us to have confidence in this method, frankly speaking. If we subtracted Krishna consciousness from the picture, then I'm not so sure. Means then it's a toss-up. You see what I mean? Because then you're comparing different educational methods. It's a very different thing. But when you add Krishna consciousnus to the picture, then we know, okay, the formula is fail-proof. It works, So.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu Janmati. Thank you very much for your yesterday's seminar. It was really an eye-opener. Many points were. One question I had was regarding the television you were talking. My son is 2 years, 4 months. We do not have a television at home, but then he got, when he was maybe like 10 to 11 months, we started showing him Little Krishna. And it was not too much, but we had to go to India when he was maybe 1 year, 2 or 3 months. India is where he got really, because in India, TV is like the center of everybody's life, and you cannot help it, right? So he got too much into Little Krishna there. So it became a real problem for me when I came back, because if we had to eat, I had to show him Little Krishna. Why I'm asking you this question is, now by Krishna's mercy somehow he's out of it. But the problem is when, what I see from my son is anything you do or show him, he remembers everything. So again when we go back to India, there'll be TV again. So that's my fear, these impressions are going to stay with them. For example, sometimes if I'm on the phone, I have to concentrate. So he forces me, he wants to see. Because he knows I'm busy, though he's 2 years, 4 months, he knows everything. Yeah. He knows when to pressurize me. So my only fear is if I go to India, I'm really scared of the TV. So how to deal with it?
So I can very much identify with that. My son is exactly your same age, maybe 1 month older. And at some point also, for just practical purposes, we started showing him a little bit of little Krishna here and there. And very soon we developed the same problem. Means it became an addiction, an immediate addiction. If you get a new toy for a child, that toy, he'll play with it excitedly, cry for it, but it will never become an addiction. Eventually, he'll give it up, lose interest, and so on. But the nature of the screen is such that you can see it. You can see the Sanskrit word is lalasa. It's like you can see the lobha, the intensity of desire that, like, I notice the difference when he wants something normal, regular, "Mummy, I want this, I want this, I want this," that type of crying, and the type of crying that happens when he wants the screen is two completely different things. And so after a few instances of that, we realized this is something that has to stop, and we just decided, okay, little Krishna or big Krishna, it doesn't matter, we're turning this whole thing off, and we just shut it off because we don't have a television set at home, but the laptop is there always, So we turned off the whole thing completely. We told our son it's broken, unfortunately we cannot get a new one, and that, it really helped. Means children will, if we turn it off, eventually they get over it. It's a fact, because they're still young. At age of 12, 13, 14, it's different, but at this age, they're still young. Now, India is a different matter, because India, okay, we go there for 1 month out of the year. Sometimes we go for more. It depends, but usually 1 month is what most working families can spare. So we go there for 1 month out of the year. And I remember as a child there also, it's a fact, TV is so much part of everyone's life. It's sort of the center of everything. And when we went to our grandparents' thing, one of the things we would end up doing with a lot of our spare time is watching Mahabharata and Ramayana. And all the Mahabharata and Ramayana that we watched, the B.R. Chopra and Ramana and Sagar, it was all during that period. It would be an excitement in terms of going to our grandparents' place to watch that. But then there were also so many other activities happening in India where they would go take you out for this activity or that, or we'd be shopping for the deities or, something. So it was there, but in India I remember that attraction was very much there. But when we came home, the whole mood and the environment was something completely different, in terms of the temple activities, in terms of the educational activities and so on. So it was part of our vacation or holiday there also. Now, one thing to remember about this Mahabharata and Ramayana is the current television serials that are appearing in India are of a very different quality than that Mahabharata and Ramayana. In fact, remakes of Ramayana also, or these current serials, devotional serials that come up right now, if you just watch them objectively, and the quality has gone down so much in terms of the devotional content has basically disappeared. The whole mood in the culture, like if you watch Ramayana, Ramana and Sagas, there's so much culture that's he's showing the respect to his father and the way the brothers Bharat is dealing with Ram, and so much of that, basically Tulsidas Ramayana and that culture is very much present in it. But these days you find it's completely different. Even like goddess Parvati and Lakshmi, they're wearing tight bras and showing their whole bodies, and it's all about the various lusty aspects of the story are brought out. The Apsara is dancing, and every 2 minutes there's a dance scene going on. It's basically Bollywood. It's Bollywood films, but the topic, instead of becoming Mr. X and Mrs. Y, it's now Radha and Krishna, or it's now Shiv and Parvati, or so on. And so whenever I watch those, I'm very shocked or very surprised. So the thing is that now in India, even with these television serials, these devotional serials, we have to be very careful. Where some of the older ones are passable still, and they're even nice, but the newer ones are really. The devotion is lost, and the drama is increased. A lot of special effects are there. So the arrows are looking spectacular, and the bows are looking spectacular. But the heart is not there anymore. It's really gone down. So India is a vacation, it's a holiday, but at home we have to be, and we have less control in India also, because we're with family and we're with in-laws and parents and uncles and aunts, and everyone's trying to show their love to the kids, and let's take you out and let's do this and let's do that. So there we have to really put in our full effort to balance all family obligations and so on. But at home we can be very clear. And that will have the dominating influence, because 11 months out of the year they're at home,
One more question I had. You were mentioning about disciplining with love. It's very hard for me to understand, how do you discipline with love?
I think he gave that example of how you have to be stern, but as soon as the child does what you want you to do, immediately the love is there. That kind of love, So, in other words, also Prabhupada said that discipline which is coming out of Krishna, service to Krishna, by staying Krishna conscious, is better than if we were not devotees. In other words, if we had to just discipline our children because they were being naughty, is a little harder than if they were serving Krishna, So that way, in other words, both love has to be there and firmness has to be there. I remember when they were naughty, then I would my voice would be very stern and firm, and my eyes would be very stern. They would be scared of me, and they would be fearful, and then they would do what I wanted. That was enough for them. If I showed my eyes, they would know that. So that kind of firmness has to be there. But then they knew that I was very soft, also. Where I would give them, and encourage them and love them and do things with them. So.
The 1, 2, 3 technique was also very effective, especially when it came from my father. It was he would count to 3, and at 3, then everything collapsed if we didn't do what we were supposed to. So the parents can be heavy. They should be heavy. There's so many instances I remember of mother or father being heavy, and we were definitely afraid of getting in trouble. It was not something, but I never remember that materializing into anything other than having a really upset mom. There wasn't it. I don't remember that repercussions in any bad way, like we didn't get to go on a program because we had to stay at home because we were being punished, or we didn't get to go to the Sunday feast, or we didn't get to eat what we wanted to eat. It never materialized into something substantial, right? But it was, I remember the fear for sure. You see,
we should not discipline them with the idea that that they'll get spoiled. In other words, we should discipline them because we want them to be good devotees. That should be the idea, because it shouldn't stop us from giving our love to them, Like sometimes people get so fearful of the fact that they may spoil the child, they actually hold back, they hold back, and that kind of stops their closeness, they don't get ever close to each other, So that we have to be careful that we do want to give an outpouring of our love, but at the same time, we want to, we shouldn't spoil them at the cost of, them getting bad qualities, In other words, there was one mother in Boise who, she was allowing her children to eat meat, and she came to the temple. I talked to her, and she says, I said, why are you doing that? You've never had meat before in your life in India, and now you're allowing. She says, I just look at their faces and I feel so sorry because all their friends are eating. So what kind of compassion is that? It's kind of misplaced compassion. So that kind of love is useless. By love we mean that it has to be accompanied by good training. We should have an idea. I want to make my children devotees, and this is what it takes. And for that, there's some restrictions, And like I said yesterday, these restrictions are not really restrictions. They are really a platform for something higher, These austerities are something that is going to be enjoyable for them once they do it, because it's on the platform of goodness, and goodness always makes you feel happy and joyful. So like that, you know. Okay. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. I was wondering, like what Prabhuji was mentioning, I also wanted to know how Mataji dealt with this. I know that, like when my son does something wrong, I usually take points out. I want to know if that way of, because I don't want to hurt him, I don't want to tell him anything, but he loses something that he loves the most. Like he wanted to go play out with his friends, or go to play tennis, or wanted to do something, or stay longer in the temple. But we would not miss the program. But he loves to stay back and eat prasada with the kids and things like that. So if he didn't do well, then I'll remind him that you lost 3 points and you can pick what you want to lose. So I wanted to know if that was my first question.
Well, I never did that, actually, because and also here in America they do this grounding system, also grounding, where if the child has been naughty, he gets to stay in his room and not go out for so many hours or something. So even that, I never did that. My neighbors were doing it and everything, because I just feel the children eventually take it for granted and they start getting resentful. Because they get used to it. After a while, it doesn't, they get upset, of course, because they are not allowed to do things. But I felt like it always took away some good Krishna conscious time for them. Like if I never took them out to the temple because they had been naughty or something, that I would be denying them some good Krishna consciousness. So I'd rather, I prefer to do it this way, where I would be stern and firm, and they would be expected to obey. And be done with it, And if they've been disobedient in spite of that, then we would be angry, right? So,
I mean, the punishment or reward never translated into anything material or physical. I mean to say, it never did. I'm saying in my mother's. What I remember is that it never translated into anything physical, as in either giving us something we wanted or denying us something that we didn't want. But rather, the reward for doing something well was that my mother was really happy with us, and that meant a lot to us, or my father was really happy. The fact that he would be proud of us, or my mother would be proud of us. And the punishment for not doing things properly was that we had to deal with a mother who was really upset with us and very angry with us. And so the job well done was the reward and the happiness of pleasing the parents, and the problem of displeasing them was the punishment, basically.
Yeah, I was also thinking about that. For the past few times, I've started, when he does something good, I actually appreciate him so much that next time he will surely repeat it. Rather than taking away, because I felt that just with the experience that it seems to be working wonders. When I appreciate him for doing something good, it'll keep repeating, rather than when I take out, it'll just work that day and then it'll be gone. Again it's coming back. My second question is, my son doesn't get homeschooled. He goes to a private school, and there's a lot of work, a lot of academic work. Now, one important reason why I decided about the private school is because he doesn't have any time to get into anything else, because they are always studying from 7:45 in the morning. I mean, they have PE that is very structured. They don't really get to talk to friends as much. So everything is very methodical, and they cannot even share food. So all those things was the thing I was looking at. And so I wanted to know about the pressure in studies. They do have good amount of pressure in studies, but about an hour and a half after comes back from school, he has homework and he has to study for tests. I wanted to know about the pressure. And the second thing is, what are the homeschooling options for high school? So since it's the school that he goes to now ends at 8 by 8th grade, and I would really try to look for options where I understand. I did talk to Mataji about high school being more peer pressure. So then how do we skip that route and directly go to college?
So the first part of the question I didn't understand fully, in terms of you were asking about the homework. And
yeah. I mean, yes, I understand with the homeschooling, it didn't seem that pressurized at all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was more a public school, my concern would be more that the work would be less, but other stuff that goes around is more, because the teachers are not very vigilant all the time. They have extra recesses, and they have more things that's floating around that you can catch up and talk. Because I mean, I have, since he was in public school for a couple of years between, so I know the language that the kids use. So it was very easy to pick up. Not that he doesn't, I mean, private school is all goody-goody, but comparatively, it is more structured and more disciplined. They are very particular about a lot of things. So basically, there's no time to catch anything because you're always studying. You're going from one class to another, you're getting everything done because they expect a lot.
Yeah, it's a fact that that some schools are definitely better than others, and private schools can be a lot more controlled in terms of the environment, and they make a better effort for that kind of thing, and the quality is more, you can monitor it better. A couple thoughts on that. I mean, so definitely, I mean, the thing is that in terms of if homeschooling is not possible in your situation, then selecting the best school possible for your kids is an important responsibility, and it definitely seems like you're trying to do that for sure. I guess the overall point that we're hoping to make here is that yes, it's true that there are many negative influences in schools, but even if, suppose, theoretically, we were to remove all those negative influences and find a school where they are focused on their studies and they're doing well, and the bad influences are very little, right? Suppose, like you're describing, you find a good school to do something like that. Even then, that what we've accomplished is only 50% of our task, right? That we've gotten rid of the bad influence, but then the question is, do we have the energy, the time, the availability then to offer them a Krishna conscious education? Because remember that just getting rid of bad influences will make our kids into good citizens of the country and our society and the world, but they won't necessarily make it into devotees, right? Becoming a devotee is an additional thing on top of that. Means it's not just removing the negative, it's actually engaging in the positive, right? And so one of the reasons my mother pulled us, we were going to private school for a couple of years because she was looking just like you are. She was looking for an environment where at least there would be nothing bad, it would be something good. So it was carefully selected, very, very expensive, but my parents were paying that this is necessary. But then eventually one of the big things that motivated her in terms of the decision was that we didn't have any time to do any of the Krishna conscious things she wanted to do with us. We'd come home, we'd be completely exhausted, tired after the day, then we had to finish our homework. So if we wanted to do anything like study Bhagavatam or learn Mridanga or harmonium or whatever, then the time was very, very limited to do that. Whereas in homeschooling, it gives you a lot of time. Means you basically, the academic side of things you can finish in maybe 4 hours of study a day, and that's more than enough. And then the rest of the time you have basically available to do all kinds of other Krishna conscious activities that we want to. So that's the point. In other words, that we work with the situation we can, and when we have a particular situation, then yes, we definitely we try to give the children the best thing. So in that way, there's nothing wrong with finding a good, parents sometimes find good charter schools, or sometimes there's even schools that encourage vegetarianism, or more schools with particular, philosophies, ideas. So those are all good things. There's nothing bad about that. But we have to also then remember, okay, as devotees, that's not enough. Whatever time I do have left from that, then on top of that, I need to give them Krishna consciousness. That's something additional. It's not just removing the negative. Because there's many people in this world, right, whose children are not bad. They're very, very nice children. And they've successfully removed all the negative influences, the gross negative influences. But that's not success by our standards. By our standards is this child a devotee of Krishna? That's success for us. So we've got a higher bar we want to achieve for. And that's what we have to keep in mind. And then in regards to your second question about high school, definitely it's possible, and we know some families that once the children passed 8th grade, they pull them out for the 4 grades of high school, which was, they felt a very, very wise decision, because during those 4 years is when a lot of the the peer pressure really, it skyrockets in terms of the stress that the children go through to try to conform to their friends and behave just like them, and the embarrassment they feel to be devotees, and the bad influences and ideas they get. So things really go a notch up in high school. So it's a nice idea, and there's certainly nothing preventing you from doing that. In terms of having a conversation with the children and saying this is the idea, getting them, because by that age you need their agreement and their enthusiasm. You can't just pull them out and do it, And once you get that, then going through the 4 years, taking the exams that are necessary and getting them into college.
One last question. I was wondering that, so when as kids, when they did this, so did they go, I understand that you went to college when you were 12. How is that possible, and do you think that is possible? Because my son is the youngest in his class. He's kind of one of the youngest because he's just turned 10 and he's already in 5th grade. So when it comes to, I was just looking at California standards, but you have to be at least 16 to be able to give the high school exit exam. So HSC, I think that's what it's called here. So in that meantime, then how? So we just do the homeschool for what grade? I mean, I know.
You would do the homeschooling. I mean, you can do homeschooling for any level. You can do homeschooling for college level if you want to. By that point, the kids can learn on their own, basically. So they can be studying up all the way through high school and then continue in their math and continue in their English. There's nothing stopping them. But one thing you should look into is that even though the limitation for high school exit exams or the GED, college high school equivalency diploma, is at minimum at 16, a lot of different communities also, especially community colleges, allow high school students to take courses simultaneously in a local college. Before they complete it. They'll let them take 1 course or 2 courses. It's actually something becoming more and more common now in high schools, just even for students going to regular high schools to take a course here and there. So that's something that's possible. Now, just going back to an earlier discussion, one thing that I want to clarify in regards to our own experience, going to college early was very much an accident for us. Means we never planned it. This was not something my mother ever dreamed of or said we're going to do it early. Someone suggested it, so we thought, let's take 1 course. And in those times, taking 1 course while you're in high school was very unusual. These days, it's not so unusual. So we took a course, and then it was pretty good and not so difficult, so I'll take another course. And eventually we thought, I could just keep going, right? And by that time, the college admissions officer said, yeah, you can just keep going. It doesn't matter, right? Because I had already done enough courses one by one like that. So it means it was something that was not a goal for us. And getting into college early is not a goal of this homeschooling process. If it happens as a byproduct, then very nice. If it doesn't happen, then it's very nice, you see.
I was just going to comment that. I thought that when Mataji really taught you from Srimad Bhagavatam, she probably never had a goal that you'd go to Oxford. So for parents like us, I mean, at least when I was thinking about it, I'm like, whenever I put my son, I just want to quickly comment, like we have to get up at 6 o'clock, we do our arati, and we get everything done in the morning. We address the DTs and everything, and then we leave to school by 7:15, and then come back, and then we have to do any other, finish our chanting rounds and all. But I was just thinking that when we do everything for Krishna, then as Ruchi said, everything material that anybody would want probably is put in place, rather than thinking that my goal in life is to go to Oxford, and then
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. I had a lot of questions, everything resolved by discussion. Just one thing. One thing is like morning prayer. Like in my case, I cannot think of homeschooling right now. But in the morning also, there are a lot of things. If I cannot do anything with my son in the morning, nothing chanting, no puja, is it okay? Everything can be done in evening, like before sleeping, chanting, everything. Okay, while chanting, if he says only Krishna, Krishna, that is enough, or like full Mahamantra, I should teach him.
How old is he?
He's 6.
6, yeah. He's still very little. Well, Bali Marathan Prabhu's, son, he has a japa bead which is very small. It's It doesn't have 108, right? How many beats does it?
3, 24, 72, 108.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you can talk to Ananda and ask her, because you can get him some smaller japa beats where he doesn't have to feel like he has to finish 108 beats, but it's better to chant the whole. Yeah. Okay. You want to do that. You want to.
Yeah,
even if he does.
And at 6 years old, it's not difficult. Even
Yeah.
3 years old. It's just if they hear you chanting full Mahamantra on the beats, they'll automatically want to chant also.
It should be loud, or we should say in our mind?
Should be loud.
Should be loud.
Yeah. It should be loud enough that you can hear that chanting, and someone sitting next to you can hear that chanting. But for smaller children, for children in general, the louder they chant, the better. Because their mind is so restless, you see, that when we Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, when we chant like that, it's good, and we struggle still to control our mind. If children chant Hare Krishna, then forget it. In 2 minutes, the mind is everywhere, you know. So we should encourage them to chant loudly. And I remember my mother doing that a lot with me, especially. I had a habit to start getting mumbling. She says, chant loudly. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And then 2 minutes later, again, you start looking at something. So therefore, for children especially, the louder they chant, the better. There's no harm. Anyway, they're shouting and screaming all day. So if better they chant Krishna's name, you'll feel good about it.
Mataji over there had with the glasses. No.
Haribol Mataji and Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, just I was wondering that in your life, do you miss any kind of thing like you're you're also doing homeschooling. So compare it to other children's, they'll ask in any kind of questions, why you're doing homeschooling, why you're not going to school. There are a lot of fun is there, a lot of stuff is there, why you're not going to school. Did you in your life, did you miss anything like that? I mean, he's going to he's not going to other schools, but he's in your
yes,
homeschooling.
Yeah. So
did he miss any kind of things because he's playing with other kids? He in case you are missing a lot of fun and a lot of things and you're concentrating in this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Any difference impact for him?
Yes. You know, because we had the support for each other, my husband and I, you know, that, we supported the idea for homeschooling, then it wasn't such a big problem when people said, you know, why you're not sending the children to school, or are they missing anything or anything like that, because we were always, the thing is that, the reason why we homeschooled was not big about the academics, like he said earlier, Radhika. It was more the conviction that I don't want to send my children to school because of the value system. It's so low, it's so poor. And now let's see what I can do. In other words, the conviction was that I don't want to send him to school because of these reasons. And then we worked on that basis, then we worked around it. Okay, what are my alternatives, So in other words, if the conviction is, when you know that this is what you want, then the conviction is there, and then it becomes easier to explain to others why you don't want to send your children to school, you see. So that was our conviction, where we wanted to raise them as devotees. We don't want to give them those values. We want to give them our values, what we learned from Prabhupada,
And Mataji, one more question. And did you feel any pressure, especially if he has done any mistakes or anything? Did you feel any pressure or anything while doing any kind of mistakes? And because sometimes if my child is doing any kind of mistakes, and automatically I'm getting so much angerness and pressure and a lot of things I used to do. Why he's not doing this one? I was little worried about some kind of things. Did you feel in your life like that?
Well, we all go through that. I mean, whether we are homeschooling or not, every mother feels frustrated that the child is not listening. It's in any circumstance. It's not just homeschooling. I mean, we all go through that. As parents, we all go through frustration when our children don't listen to us. And we just learn to work with it, We learn to work around it. It's something that we take in our stride. We say, okay, this is part of becoming a mother. So it's not something that I felt ashamed or embarrassed, because in homeschooling, there's less likely a chance that, some major mishaps are going to happen, because the child is so much with you and, trying to lead a Krishna conscious lifestyle, where the outside influence is much less. So there's less problems in that way. Okay.
I have a question that we have been homeschooling from last 2.5 years, and when I started not working, my parents were okay with it because they always wanted, I should take care of my kids rather than checking my career and going to work and all. But my in-laws, until now they don't know that we are homeschooling. They still know that Balaram is going to school, he is doing good and everything. Yeah. So in my family, everybody knows.
They visit in summer, so they know.
Not yet. So so we are still adjusting with them, and they don't know at all about it. They are thinking that I'm not working because I have to take care of both of them and all. So at some point they would know definitely, because Prabhuji has a lot of cousins here. His Tauji is here, and they will eventually tell them, because they all know who is here in USA that we are homeschooling. So when they would know in what way we should deal with them. And I have heard this kind of story in Indian homeschoolers here, like, their grandparents yelling at them, what are you doing at home? Why your mom is not sending you to school and all, but still they are doing it because they like it so much and it's so flexible. So could you please tell about that?
You pray to Lord Jagannath. I heard from Prabhuji, he fulfills everyone's desires. So but the thing is, that's natural.
Yeah, so far that's why never it has created a problem until now.
It means even in our own family, in India, it was, from everyone in India, it was like, you're ruining the children's lives. What are you doing? बच्चे घर पे रहते हैं, स्कूल नहीं जाते, भर्ती नहीं हुई उनके स्कूल में, हम करवा दें, भर्ती करवा दें, फीस देना हो तो हम दे दें फीस. And people, and especially we went with shikha and short hair and everything, they thought, abhi isko pandit bana diya, sannyasi bana diya, pehle padhne to do. And so, in the beginning there was a lot of questioning that was happening, and a lot of doubts and a lot of pressure also. So I know my mother and father, they both dealt with a lot of pressure in that regard. But ultimately, as parents, we have the responsibility to look after our children. Means everyone else gives advice, but on the day-to-day level, it says, in Bhagavatam, Guru na sasyat, Pita na sasyat. The responsibility is ultimately ours. If we don't take them back to Godhead, then we have not done our duty. The grandparents have done their duty already by raising us as devotees, right? Then our duty is then to our children. So if the husband and wife have strong, support for each other, that yes, this is something we're going to do together, then eventually the grandparents will come around. And the time I remember my grandparents really came around was when we got a little bit older and they saw how, the kids are really smart. They're well spoken. They're doing things nicely. We showed them exam scores. See, we did so well on these exams. See, we wrote these essays. See, it got published here. This is what happened. So when they saw the results, then that questioning, it went down. And ultimately then when we went to the college, university, then there were no questions, right? Then it was only praise. And the whole thing turned around and said, ye log bacche kabhi school nahi gaye, ab dekho Oxford mein padh rahe. So it's tapasya, but it takes a little bit of time. It's just like we become devotees. We become convinced, I want to be a devotee, right? But we get so much pressure from the family. Not everyone. Some of us are very fortunate. The family says, yeah, very nice, and they're also devotees. But for most Indians, there's a lot of pressure from the parents and from the in-laws, and how did you become a devotee? But we survive. We say, no, this is something I'm so convinced about. I cannot give up Krishna, so there's no way. And over time, then 90% parents, they at least become favorable, if not become devotees themselves, right? Because ultimately, the parents' nature is that they're ultimately going to stick with their children. Means ultimately they'll become softened by the kids. And grandparents especially are very, very weak when it comes to grandchildren. They become very softened. So once the grandchildren start growing up, then they will start to change the heart of the grandparents.
And also just wanted to
because my father also used to test Balaram, not because of homeschooling or all, but just wants to say that we are not teaching only Krishna. Yeah. So he will ask some difficult mathematical questions, but he was able to answer, so he's very happy that he's learning other things. So because sometimes it gave suspicion that whether you are learning or not learning. That's all.
No, so it's good enough. By the time he actually finds out, you can say, see, last 2-3 years, no problem, right? And he wasn't going to school. He was at home only. So you have that period of evidence that, no, he's completely normal, he's fine. You didn't feel anything wrong, right? You spoke to him, he was good. So it's been happening already for 3 years now. Yeah. So that way it will be, I think,
even till 7th grade, in one way, I was homeschooled in the sense. I never gone to school just for going to write the exams because teacher comes to home and teaches us. In high school I went, so I think I don't see any difference being in India also.
Yeah, it's a fact. Homeschooling is a lot more common in India than people realize in traditional settings and also in very upper class families. Both you find a lot of homeschooling happening in the past also.
Most tutor based, it's like
exactly.
Your school was there just for formality, and then when you go and
even today, so much of Indian education is like that. Students skip classes and they don't learn. They say openly, "I don't learn anything in school," and then everything is taught at home by a tutor who's hired by the parents for extra education. So it's basically homeschooling. You see, basically homeschooling. So
Prabhu had one.
This question is for Mataji. Mataji, when you started homeschooling, like generally the tendency is to say, okay, we want to make them an engineer or this, or let's say Stanford University or something. So did you have any inkling of or saying worry that maybe they will not become this, or I don't really care what they become, but let me just continue studying? What was the goal, final goal like?
I was a new devotee, and I think how new devotees are. They become very over-enthusiastic. So my goal was just to make them into very good devotees. I wanted them to be pure devotees, like that. So just like any mother, right? But I was very kind of firm, fixed in that idea. So I didn't really worry about what they were going to become. I just wanted things to develop and see what their interest would be like. So I didn't have that kind of goal, yeah. And not being in India helps, right? Because in India you have to kind of, take them in a certain direction, otherwise, yeah.
Children of Indian immigrants will go into many multiple fields and many different areas. We see that already happening. Is the generation born from the immigrant generation is very different than the professions of the immigrant generation are all very standard and predictable. Because we naturally, the immigrant generation goes towards fields that are guaranteed some success because we come here for the job itself. But the children growing up here, in other words, for example, my peers, as I've been born and raised in this country, as well as those who are younger, they're going into all kinds of fields, all different fields, because they've grown up here. They see all the different possibilities. They understand them. They talk to people, and they say, "No, I don't want to be any of that. I'm going to become a sports analyst or something, or an athletic trainer, or, it's all kinds of fields they do."
Policeman, police officer, or pilot. Yeah. There's one Indian family there whose son is actually a police officer. So. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. So one aspect I wanted to check is how about the physical education, the sports or the things that you would normally want, everyday activity. What kind of activities would you do
Mhm. Yeah, what we did was basically, swimming, quite a bit of swimming, and then they would mostly, we kept them so busy physically within the temple that we actually didn't feel a need for some special sports. That's the whole thing, that I did not have them do any organized sports for their physical, because like I was telling you, we were running a center and there was so much work to be done, in terms of organizing, cleaning, doing things. And also they had a lot of outlet when friends would come over and they would play basketball. We had a basketball court outside. They would play with them. So, the physical activity was taken well care of. I didn't feel that much worry about that.
So, in the case, if you don't have the temple activities, or generally the mother who's gonna homeschool the kids, so how can we get them the physical activity part?
They can join.
Yes.
Sports.
Yeah, actually, I think Bali Madan Prabhu can give some tips in terms of sports opportunities. You were saying enough for homeschooled kids here. Maybe you can.
I can maybe talk offline to you, but just in an essence, for the homeschoolers, because here there are much more privileged, so there are a lot of vendors which is available. So even though the government pays for you go to tennis or soccer or volleyball or football, whatever game, but as Prabhuji mentioned yesterday, we really try to avoid some violent games where you don't send kids where physical exercise is more. But at the same time, I give an example, Prabhupada used to play soccer in his childhood days. So, and Balram also likes to go there. So definitely we enroll for the homeschoolers. Them.
Prabhuji, I wanted to ask, is there a way that devotees online can ask questions, or?
Yes, I think there is unmute *6 or something. *6, if you press unmute yourself, and you can ask questions if you have anyone. Or, huh? Oh, they can text. Somebody is watching. Hari Sankirtan Prabhuji.
Yeah, okay. So basically, if you can press *6 or *5, one of those, it should unmute your call, and then you can ask the question, whoever is on the phone. So if you are just watching the video, you cannot ask questions, then you can text to somebody's number here.
Or you can call
510-396-2810. It's 510-396-2810. If you are just watching the video, you can text the message, and then Shailesh Prabhu can ask the question. It's 510-396-2810. You can text the message on this number.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I have a question for you. So it's basically for Mataji. Is that you said that you are doing like you did you woke up early in the morning, then you have to cook for your husband, children, then you do the deity worship, then take care of children, and all those things. How much stress as a mother you had? Is it possible for everybody to do that? Or they have to balance out certain tasks?
Well, I would be doing that anyway, even if my children were going to school. I would still be cooking. In fact, during homeschooling, I felt more relaxed because things were more flexible. Like if it wasn't like I had to cook and pack food by 8 o'clock. I had longer period to do those things. And if I was tired, I could take rest during the afternoon while the children did something. I gave them something to do. So it's not like I have to be always there and active all the time. And children understand if the parents are sick or not feeling well, they will adjust accordingly. So for me, in fact, actually I had them as helpers. Having them, I got some 2 additional help which I could never get otherwise. Because, we would, like I said, in the evening we would clean up the house before my husband came home. So I had a lot of help. And then for festivals and other things, even if you don't have a temple right in your house, you still are going to be celebrating festivals and things like that in your own home. And they were a big help for me, actually. And of course, there are days when I was really tired and I had to take some time away, or, so my husband would come and take the children out and I would get some free time Yeah.
Another question wife had is that, I mean, like what somebody, like Ananda was just telling that basically you start the homeschooling from around 6 and around the age of 6. So basically like you go for the initial 1 or 2 years you go to school. So if you like stop schooling after say 2-3 years, or for certain people like they're already going to school, they stop it now and then start homeschooling, would they feel a difference or they can easily adjust to that sort of scenario?
Well, there will be some adjustment now because the children are rushing to school by 8 o'clock. There will be adjustment because things will be a little bit more relaxed in that sense. To me, the difference just hit me really hard. I felt a lot easier and happier because things were not so hectic, and there was actually less worry on my part. Because when they were going to school, I was more in anxiety because thinking what they're learning, what they're eating. You know, every time they had a party there, I had to rush there with my own homemade, muffins or which had no eggs and things like that. To me, it was like too much, more pressure for them when they were going to school, and the pressure of doing projects for homework and just always being up and up. That kind of stress that comes with school, children going to school, was not there for me, and that felt a lot easier.
Third question I was like, does the homeschooling work for all sort of kids? If the kid is not intellectually that high to learn on their own, or I mean, do we stop homeschooling or like we still try to continue with that sort of scenario?
Well, see, the reason why we are homeschooling is to give our children character education. And no matter what varna or ashram they're going to adopt, we are trying to give them good values, good character. And that works for everybody. The reading of Shastra, the morning program, and giving them basic Krishna conscious lifestyle. It doesn't matter what kind of child you have, what kind of mental... It's not just meant for children who are intellectual or, and we can always, if the child doesn't want to sit down and read Bhagavatam, it's okay, But everybody loves stories. But still, there are children who are more inclined, to study Shastra, and there's children who are less inclined to study that. And we can always adjust for that. Like my younger son was more musically inclined. Of course, we read Bhagavatam together, but he got a lot of his philosophy through songs. He was into music, and he would like to sing Narottam Das Thakur's songs and all. And there's so much philosophy, it's like Shastra. So whatever your child is, it's still it can be worked out. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu and Mataji, for enlightening us. So my question was, how does this exams and the level of, what is the level of your progress in material education? How does it work? Like it depends from state to state. Like you have to give an exam every year, and you'll get like, a certification from the board, Board of Education or the government. Then you can go to the next level, or how does it work?
Yeah. Okay. There's some sound coming. Is that someone trying to speak up there in the heavenly planets somewhere? Is there someone online trying to speak? Oh, okay. Sorry, please, Mataji. Go ahead.
For this state, it is like you have to write the STAR test if you are going through a charter school or any kind of other homeschool, certified homeschool. If you are not, then no need of writing any exam. So how to test is what Prabhuji used to do is that Iowa basic skill test. That happens in every state in the United States. So you can just write that test and check your level.
And that's offered once a year?
Once a year.
By homeschooling
think,
groups?
Yeah.
I think the Iowa test is the same thing as the Challenger's.
Uh-huh.
So there is an online question. Can you read that, Mataji? Yeah. Give the mic.
This question is from Ganganarayan Prabhu. He used to live here and moved to Houston recently. They have, I think, 1-year-old child, son, Govardhan. So his question is, Ishopanishad talks about teaching knowledge and nescience side by side, and a regular school could allow for this. How does this fit in with homeschooling? In other words, are homeschool kids capable of discriminating?
It's a good question. The culture of knowledge and the culture of nescience are both very important. Education about it, or knowledge about it, as Ishopanishad says, there's a couple points on this idea. One is that what Ishopanishad is talking about is that we need to know about the material world, but not that we need to experience sinful activity, right? Or experience the material world. So that's the first point. In other words, that we should know what is meat eating. We should know why meat eating it is bad. We should know what the effects of it are. But there's no need to actually eat meat to figure out, oh, now I have knowledge of the culture of nescience also. Means Prabhupada explains that those who are first class, they can know something by hearing about it. They can understand, oh, this is not good. Those who are second class have to experience it, then only they understand. And those who are third class, even after experiencing it, they don't understand. So that's the first point, is knowledge about the culture of nescience is different than knowledge of. Now in experience of. In homeschooling, the knowledge of the culture of nescience is very much there because we're living and interacting in the world. Automatically our knowledge of the material world will be there. The experience of the material world will be there. That is something that we don't have to actually try for. We don't have to strive for. How to experience the material world, the real world out there. It's a world with all kinds of things, politics and people who are not so nice to us and misbehavior, and all that is there. We will experience it in life anyway. There's no need for us to go out and try to give our children that experience because that's something they're going to get. Rather, the early years of life are meant to train the children so that when they have to deal with all of that culture of nescience, they will be prepared to deal with it through the culture of knowledge, right? So it's meant to give the culture of knowledge so that they're prepared for the culture of nescience. Because the culture of nescience, they will get guaranteed 100%. There's no way you can homeschool your child in such a way so as to protect them 100%. Right? Now, if by the culture of nescience we mean things like studying the material world, like science and economics and government and things like that, that all can come in homeschooling, no problem. Means all you have to do is find a science textbook and study, or find a history textbook and study. So that kind of culture of knowledge nescience is not a problem. But if by that we mean actually encountering the real things of the real world, sometimes people feel, in other words, that you're protecting your child too much by homeschooling. Isn't it better they go out there, they meet all those different types of people, deal with them, and then they learn? They will end up dealing with all of those people anyway, right? As they grow up, but even at home. The point of homeschooling is to give them the training they need so they can become strong, so that when they encounter all of that, just like they go to college, they learn all these theories in school, evolution and Big Bang theory and all kinds of different academic ideas and atheistic ideas, and they'll be taught as truth. There's no way to avoid that. But by a solid Bhagavatam-based education, an education that's based on Srimad Bhagavatam, then it's not going to be a problem. Then when they encounter that, then they will know how to deal with it. Right? I remember sitting in school and sitting through the science classes and chemistry classes at the university, and in my mind constantly engaging with them and thinking, yeah, but in Bhagavatam it says this, and no, but this is like this, but what would be the argument? And sometimes it would be confusing, and I would have to ask my parents, ask sannyasis or Ganapati Maharaj when they visited, or someone like that, right? So that was good, it was healthy. But if we send them into that environment without that solid basis in Krishna consciousness, then it's hopeless. Then it's practically hopeless, because so much is working against it. So much is working all around us. 99% of the messages we get are all the culture of nescience, right? So we have a 1% opportunity to give them the culture of knowledge, and we should grab that opportunity, and the rest will come automatically. The last point I want to make in this regard is that the so-called culture of nations can also be learned through Srimad Bhagavatam. One of the things that you find in Srimad Bhagavatam is all kinds of very adult topics there. Right? Means violence, adult relationships, talk about sex, about human body and sexual relationships is all there in Srimad Bhagavatam. And sometimes parents even worry the other way, is if I read with my parents, my children, Bhagavatam, then will they not get too much of these adult topics? You can go to the Puranjan story, for example, in Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's full description of the woman's body and the breasts and how attractive they are, and the man becomes attracted, and the cloth moves from one side to another, and everyone becomes embarrassed. And I remember reading this with my mother and feeling, oh, this is very embarrassing, or what are we talking about? And at that time I was a kid, I didn't have much understanding of any of this. But the thing is that, think about this, that no child in today's world grows up innocent. No one. Right? By the age of 10, their innocence is completely finished. It's completely gone. Isn't it so much better that they learn what they have to about the material world from Bhagavatam than learning it from the internet or learning it from their friends and so on? From the Bhagavatam, they get the perspective that says, actually, this material sex life is necessary, and it can be good if it's used in Krishna's service. And there you see the example of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, right, for example. And if you don't use it in Krishna's service, like Puranjan or Diti and Kashyapa, then you see the results. Right? So it gives such a nice perspective on adult topics. And in this way, the child can grow up, learn the culture of nations, but with the eyes of Shastra, with Shastra Chakshu, rather than learning it from some of their friends who, pss, 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 have you heard that? And pss, 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 like this. What are they going to learn like that? You see? What are they going to learn?
Srila Prabhupada, in the purports also, Srila Prabhupada talks, sometimes he talks about atheists, how they think, and then he gives the Krishna conscious perspective. So.
Yes. Also, violence is a big thing. You know, sometimes parents get afraid. In Bhagavatam, there's Parashram stories, and you know the hands and the legs are floating in rivers of blood, and it's like, oh my God, this is. But you know, that gore is part of our society. You see it everywhere. And there's also some human desire for gore and violence, and it's there in us. And kids even, they want to see some kind of... But it's nice, they see it in Bhagavatam, it satisfies whatever desire they have. But what do they learn there from Bhagavatam? Is that we never have to do something like that. When the problem comes, Krishna will take care of it. Yes, Krishna comes as Parashram, he deals with all the bad guys. So you never have to be afraid, and you never have to kill anyone yourself, because Krishna will always protect you. This is what they learn. Nrsimhadev is so violent, yes? He's pulling out, he's opening up, he's pulling out the intestines, and he's making a garland out of it. I mean, it's like, oh, for a boy especially, it's like, wow, this is really good, you know? Something interesting. But what is it? Means the Lord is there to protect a 5-year-old child. So same thing, the second message it gives the child is, if you ever need protection, then you don't ever have to tear anyone's belly open, right? Because Lord Nrsimhadev will be there to do it. And that's the big difference between violence in Bhagavatam and violence outside. You see violence outside in the TV, in the video games and so on. What happens? Children become desensitized to violence, and then they think, oh, it's so easy, it's so much fun. They pick up a gun and they shoot people. Yes? But in a devotee's perspective, you see, no, Krishna does that. He takes care of the bad guys. I don't have to do it. One thing my Guru Maharaj always says, he says, if you see, only Krishna and Balaram kill the demons in Vrindavan. Right? No one else kills demons in Vrindavan. So if you want to live in Vrindavan, you let Krishna and Balaram kill the demons. You don't go out to kill the demons. Yeah? So it gives a very nice message about this world.
There are 2 more questions. So this is from Krishna Purushottam Prabhu. He has a baby who's about 7 months, so he's asking, what are the toys suggested for 7-month-old boy? And also, what age we can start morning programs?
Second question I'll answer first. Morning program can come right from the beginning. I know my 7-month-old babies, my second child is 7 months. He's ecstatic during morning program. It's the one time where we don't have to worry about engaging either one of our kids. The one is dancing and chanting, and the 7-month-old is completely engaged, watching, this side, that side, this side, that side. And then the first question about the toys. For children, especially smaller children, the household items that are safe for them are the best thing. They will go on playing endlessly with them. In the kitchen, they see the parents, and a 2-3-year-old child will sit with the pots and pans, and you give him a few pieces of whatever you're doing. You're making pasta, give him a few pieces of pasta, the uncooked. If you're making rice, give him a little bit of rice. Give him a pot and a bowl, and he'll sit for hours playing with that. He'll never get tired. Every day the same thing he can play. But if you get him electronic toys and stuff, he'll push the buttons, he'll drive himself crazy, drive you crazy, and then 3 days later the money will go to waste because he won't touch that again after the excitement has been lost, right? So the natural simple toys made of wood and pots and pans and spoons and these things are the best for kids.
We have another question.
There's just one more question and finish that. So the question is, what about social skills in case of a single child?
Can you say the name? Who asked?
Not sure. It's some local devotee, but there is no name.
Social skills for single. For homeschooling, we've seen done very nicely, effectively, in all kinds of circumstances. Multiple children, 2 children, 1 child, 1 girl, 1 boy, 2 boys, 2 girls. So it can work in all those situations. But for a single child, definitely one has to work harder to make sure that the social needs are satisfied. So there's no question. When you have 2 children at home, then they'll keep each other engaged and they learn how to deal with each other and fight and play and so on. But with 1 child, then it becomes all the more important to utilize the techniques that we talked about. Preaching Krishna consciousness, outreach programs, homeschooling co-ops, community groups, going to the temple regularly, participating in plays, stuff like that. Because obviously there, the need for social activity will be greater with 1 child. So, Prabhuji, what is our time? We should end 3:30.
And maybe 10 minutes.
Okay. So maybe we make this our last question and then we can wrap up.
Prabhuji, I have one more last question. For me, it's not possible to do the homeschooling, but I have 2 children. One is 10 years old and 2 years old. But I want to raise him like a Krishna consciousness and like a good devotee. But can you give any kind of tips? Because even though if I want to send him a good, private school or a public school, can you give any tips to me so I can raise up my children like a Krishna consciousness? So
definitely.
It's better to try. It's necessary to me because it's not possible to me to giving the homeschooling because I'm not that much capability. So that's what I want to suggest. Can you give any suggestions to me?
Yes, I mean, the thing is that what we talked about in the seminar, about at least 80% of it you can apply. Maybe not to the full extent, but at least partially. Means creating the right home environment, all the things we talked about in the first part of the seminar, and especially study of Srimad Bhagavatam with your children. If you cannot do it every day, then at least on weekends when you have some time off, have the whole family come together. And even if it's just for 1 hour, you read Bhagavatam together. Because Bhagavatam is such that if children develop even a little bit of attachment to it, then it's completely transcendental. It will transform them in some way. It's one of the 5 most potent aspects of devotional service, right? Deity, devotee, Naam, Dham, and Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is such, the 5 most potent aspects of devotional service. Why are they called the most potent? Because even a little bit of attachment to one of those 5 can get one eventually to the platform of pure devotional service, right? Actually quite quickly to the platform of pure devotional service. So that's why even if children are attached a little bit and you can only read once a week, then study Srimad Bhagavatam with them, get a full set of Srimad Bhagavatam from the temple and study with them nicely. And that in itself will be a recipe for success in the long term. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So one question I have is, I have listened to, I think your seminar was also in Seattle. It works wonders for 1 month, and then you go back to, especially when you are not homeschooling, and then, so you go back to your old patterns. For example, I used to read Bhagavatam every day, and then 1 week we went to India, and then we never picked up. So what is something that you can tell us that will stick the whole, so we'll follow through this whole thing?
The same thing used to happen to us regularly also. We would make a plan, we would make a schedule, we would try hard. It would work for some time, then it would fail. The key is keep started again. Means this is the whole key of devotional service, right? Is that we fail, we slip, then we try again. And we work harder. And each time we do it around, we'll we'll do it better, we'll do it more intensely, we'll do it longer, and we'll see how we gradually improve. Spiritual life is like a spiral. You go around the same point over and over again, but each time you go a little bit higher, right? A little bit higher. So I still remember as a child making all these schedules. Now we'll cover this much in this month and this much, and we study from this to this. And the whole schedule, we'll follow the schedule for some time, and then it would fail. But then you try again, like that. You keep trying.
Pretty much that would be it. It's not in the material world. It's not possible to just keep going and sustain something, because we are all progressing. It's not like as parents we have to be perfect, but the fun of it or the joy of it was, in trying to do the best we can. Because when you're trying to serve Krishna is so grateful that he really encourages us. To me, the way I see it, homeschooling is pure devotional activity. Because you're helping your children to become pure devotees. I mean, Krishna is so pleased with that. He's so pleased that whatever you're lacking, he's going to fill in. He's going to especially take care of you if you try it, And if you cannot, it's okay. If you cannot, you're still trying to do what you can and trying to take aspects of it from it and struggle through it. Because I know it becomes harder. If children are going to school, it becomes much harder to do anything, So in spite of that, if you're struggling, then Krishna is, going to help you.
So, we should end.
Yes, you have a question? Do you want to take one more?
It's up to you, Prabhu. We're happy to be here.
We can make it last. We are last.
Okay.
Sorry. Actually, I had a question for Mataji and Prabhuji both, but partially it has been answered. My question was, if does the homeschooling works better if there are 2 children or more? If you only 1 children, because right now my son is 7-year-old, he goes to a private school, and if I imagine being with Advaita the whole day, and then I will be very happy, because right now I don't get much time with him, but I can see through homeschooling I can get lots of time with him, and that is very good, exciting for me. But looking at his nature, energetic, how to engage him. So did it help on your part that there were 2 of them, and it was, and for him also, I'm sure. And the second question I had was, you mentioned that when you are correcting the kids about telling them if they practically more specific about the grades, if they don't get good grades, then we don't show them that we are upset. Then how was your approach to still correct them and tell them that it's not okay?
Yes, I'll answer the first and you can answer the second. So in terms of course it's a lot easier if you have 2 children, because then they can play and study together and things like that. But we know of many families in ISKCON where there's only 1 child and they're doing successful homeschooling. There's one family in Washington, D.C., and she's only got 1 son, and she's been homeschooling for years, and he seems very together and very happy. So like we were discussing, you just have to find him avenues. Well, the other thing that will work is having a homeschooling co-op now. Even if you have a few families here and you can do things together and share things and come together and discuss and get moral support from each other, And now with the California system, a lot of that worries can go away, because they have a charter school for homeschoolers where actually the child goes there and studies in a classroom, different subjects. Like there's 10 in a classroom, and the teachers are very carefully selected, and so they have association this way if you want to try it out this way, But a homeschooling co-op would be wonderful, like in the temple, So there's ways around it where you can, that missing thing that you feel that he needs, it can be satisfied.
Yeah. In terms of your second question, the point is that we have to always raise the bar high for our children. You can do better. I know you can do better. You're doing so well. But the point is also, as parents, then when you're pushing your child too hard, and when you're encouraging your child. Means there's a distinction there. And as parents, okay, we know now I'm really pushing to the point where I'm going to break the child's back. And at this point, no, the child, I know he can do better, he's not doing well enough, So the point is, if grades are not good and there's D's and C's happening, then definitely we have to express our displeasure. It's not like, the idea that, my parents never look at my report card and they don't care, that's really damaging for a child. It really destroys the self-esteem. So that's not the point at all. But at the same time, we want to avoid the other extreme. You got an A- in this is terrible, why aren't you in the top 2% of the class? If that's the message we're delivering, then it's not so good. Right? It's all about, education is all about balance. In fact, everything in life is about balance, right? That we don't try this extreme, we don't try this extreme, but we find some middle path where we can do things in a way that is reasonable. And if we try, then with the parents' instinct and Krishna's mercy, we'll get it about 80% right, and that's as good as we can hope for in the material world, right? We cannot be perfect parents, we cannot be perfect teachers, we cannot be perfect children. We're material world, if everyone's doing the best they can with the desire to serve Krishna, then Krishna is very happy. And like my mother was just saying, Krishna will fill up the rest, right? Yoga kshema vahamyaham, he says. He carries what we lack and he preserves what we have. And that's the thing. Just think about it. As devotees, suppose we're cultivating someone. We've made someone a devotee. We're cultivating them. 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, we're making devotees. How much effort it takes, right? And how proud we feel. Oh, this person is a devotee because I've been looking after them. I've been mentoring them. Ultimately, now they're getting initiated or so on. We like to preach, right? But Krishna has given us the best opportunity to make devotees right in our home. Right? So it's such a nice opportunity for devotional service that Krishna has given us. And the nice thing about it is that He's given us full responsibility for those people. Everyone else, responsibility is shared. But this one, Krishna requires of us. Right? He requires of us. If we don't preach to others, okay, then someone else may preach. But if we don't train our children in Krishna consciousness, no one can do that for us. Right? Only we can do it. And that's why it's such a nice form of devotional service, of bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness. Right? It's practically devotional service we're doing full time. And imagine that. We want to serve Krishna full time, right? Here Krishna is giving the opportunity to serve him full time. So we should be very grateful that Krishna has given us this chance.
Thank you so much. I also like Mataji's point that how Prabhuji and Mataji both were what exactly was she, that she was more spiritually inclined and not much worried about how really, she's doing her own duty, but Prabhuji would come and he would make sure that how they are doing intellectually, and of course exams would show that. And so that was really a very inspiring point that both of them are support each other to this particular system of homeschooling and bringing up such a wonderful kids.
Yeah, as a husband and wife, we don't need to be completely alike. Variety is also the spice of spiritual life. Where we can be different and actually it can be really nice because we kind of give strengths to different areas, and we shouldn't get frustrated, if we have some difference of opinion in our spouse, because that can actually be helpful,
Thank you so much. It is such an inspiration. Thank you so much.
So just we want to take this opportunity to say a couple things. One is that tomorrow my mother will still be here in town, and specifically for those who are looking, considering the possibility of homeschooling, she'll be there to discuss more individually and personally and answer questions. And all of that is coordinated by Ananda Vrindavan Mataji, so you can just discuss with her for tomorrow to coordinate schedules and meetings if you want one-to-one meetings. And then we also have a few more copies of the book that are still available, I think 3 or 4. So if you haven't gotten one, then there's still a chance to get them here. And then the last thing is that we just want to take this opportunity to thank several devotees who played an important role in arranging this seminar. Vishakha Leela Mataji, who was very much involved in getting this off the ground and getting it started here in San Jose. We want to really thank our hosts and organizers, Ananda Vrindavan Mataji and Bali Mardan Prabhu, and also their sons Balaram and Abhay. The whole family has taken such nice care of us and really worked hard to organize this whole seminar and cook yesterday prasadam for all the devotees during lunchtime and take us here and there and back and forth. So we really want to express our gratitude to them for everything they've done. Also to Vaisheshika Prabhu and the devotees involved in running this temple and serving the deities. None of this obviously is going to be possible without the temple. None of us would be here and we wouldn't be here. So their inspiration and their service to the deities is really the only thing that we live on, the inspiration we have. And finally, we want to thank all of you for being such a good audience. Yesterday, Prabhuji was telling me that you're used to listening to 3-4 hour long classes. So I understood that this is really a community of good listeners. That's why yesterday I was so surprised, how well you were listening. So now actually I understood. Last night we were discussing the background behind this. So thank you all so much for being a good audience and asking so many nice questions. It really gave us a lot of inspiration. So.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji and Mataji. Thank you. So I just like to also add Padma Mataji, who cooked the cake, who she did not mention, otherwise you mentioned everybody else. Please give a big hand to her also. And Lavanya Mataji for cooking the pasta. No, cake also. Sorry, pasta I cooked. Thank you very much. So I just like to add few spices at the end. We will just end in 2 minutes. But giving long time I'm giving a story of my grandfather. He was a big politician, and I had opportunity to one time given a direct flower garland to Rajiv Gandhi, who came our home many times. So he was saying me, because I was asking, he was the first person to join Congress High in Odisha and started the whole things there and studied in Allahabad and being more in law and all. So I asked him, what is the 3 grounding of success? What is your key to the success? And one thing he gave us, a good leadership qualities. In my college and everywhere, I was president in my college and lead the team. And that is the quality he gave since our childhood, even though we studied or not. And I definitely do a deep gratitude towards my family member. And one thing he told, that how to, Indian politics, and now 20 years it has gone, but back the year in 70s, and there was some potential and there was some quality. And 3C formula. And the 3C formula is like this. I will basically apply in what Mataji and Prabhuji talked about, little bit of interlinkage. He was mentioning about convincing, the first one, confusing, and corrupting. He was saying that if you go, really the smart audience is there, try to convince them. And if they do not know anything, then try to confuse them. And if they none of the things you can win their heart, then try to corrupt them. So fundamentally, the 3C, how it applies here is, there are, people who have gathered some information about homeschooling and all, which is a sign of, your convictions. You should really step forward to the next step. And the confusion part is, those who are really little bit, it is also a sign of intelligence, because confusion is the beginning where you really need to get more into the process and understand what are the things. Corruption, if there is some material motivations that somebody asking, can we do it in 10 years, done this, can you go to Oxford, can you go to this one. Maybe at the later point of time, really, if it is a commercial thinking, you may get disappointment. So better not to expect too much on that area, rather than my goal should be that how my really son or daughter becomes a devotee, bottom line. But Krishna will definitely take care, and I guarantee there won't be an academic loss. There won't be. And it is all child's own ability and talents. He will succeed. You cannot really push too hard. It is his, but we give facilitations. So overall, I believe there are 3 or 4 family in the long run. I believe in last, they are interested to some extent. What Mataji was suggesting, that can have a further follow-up call, a monthly call, or anybody is interested. The reason for not combining many things, like there are people who are joined in the Krishna Yahoo group, which Mataji is conducting for Bhagavatam class. Let's not mix with the homeschoolers with that. That is for all the kids who are going to private school, public school, so that they get a spiritual advantage. The reason for 2 ashrams, like if you are training to brahmacharis or if you are training to grihasthas, there are certain etiquettes has to be trained or certain differentiation has to be made. So just imagine homeschoolers are like brahmacharis and other guys are like going as a grihasthas. That doesn't mean that grihasthas cannot be better devotee than brahmachari or brahmachari cannot, either way. But at the same time, that has to be certain tactics and the principles of education are a little different. So if somebody of any of you are seriously interested in joining the homeschooling, I would say really think about it, make a rational judgment, what is good, what is not good, make a pros and cons in terms of your time, in terms of cost, in terms of everything, be practical. Don't really jump on, okay, I got it now, next day, after 3 months, I have to go back to school. So not in that one. You really think of down the road 3 to 5 years. And then Mataji is anyway always willing to help in Skype and many other different methods. Prabhuji will be around. So any expert help we can take from her. Any localized help, we are here, and anybody is interested, we can set up a call and at least giving some information. Even though you are not interested right now, after 1 year I wanted to see, still it might be helpful for you to understand about it. So we can conduct certain online conferences and other localized channel to provide you more information. That's all I wanted to share. For anybody is seriously interested, you are right. And Vishakhamata, you are also seriously considering. You wanted to say something?
So those who are seriously interested, I'm planning for a co-op as Mataji suggested in our community, which will be very good because we have so many families and so many kids, and we are like scattered and many have just one single child, so the co-op would help. So she is ready to talk to those families tomorrow at 4 p.m. only just for the co-op who are really interested in starting homeschooling. So we can start the co-op immediately.
So thank you, Mataji and Prabhu. We don't want this to be a one-time seminar. If you could come every year and kind of keep inspiring us over a period of time, I think all of us will have that full conviction and have the confidence to start or continue with the homeschooling. So we request if you could come every year or more than once a year, that will be nice.
If Radha Madan Mohan allow us and all the devotees, then we certainly pray that we can be back in your association soon.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai.